bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome, everyone. It's USL All Access on this Tuesday evening. Mike Watts, Devon Kerr, Emmett McConnell's at the controls as ever. Can't wait to have Danny Stone on the show. This is a long time coming. My apologies to all of Orange County. We've been trying to get this done for a while, and I've been a moving target. But I do sit down. Devon will walk the cat, which is also overdue. We're going to review all the Jaeger Cup groups, permutations. We're headed to the quarters. We've got our 8 teams. We'll tell you how it happened. We've also got a ton of national TV content this week to tell you guys about on CBS Sports Network and ESPN2. Devon, you are working like 38 games in the next 2 weeks, and yet you found time for us. Isn't that great?
For once, I can actually say in my career that your math is worse than mine, and that is saying something, my friend. Yeah, it's going to be a fun stretch. The only thing in terms of congestion that I have experienced more was actually with you, my friend. It was the summer as well of 2021, and it was the balancing act at that point in time that was the inaugural MLS Next tournament combined with the ridiculous schedule that was the return of the USL Championship. Different schedule that year. We did groups in the summer of 2021, and we were happy to take any game any way that we could get it. After COVID in 2020, you and I promised each other that we would never look back on opportunities that were put in front of us and said, man, I wish I would have done that. So put your head down and go, buddy. That's where we're at.
Flipping wild. All right, Dev, a lot of news to talk about before we get to Jaeger Cup. Let's start with the earthquaking news out of Detroit. Detroit City has fired their former head coach, their sporting director, as recently as last Tuesday. Trevor James. The club itself is in quite a skid going into that news. It was 1 win in 11 games. Obviously, Trevor had navigated into the front office. They brought in Danny Dicchio. More attack-minded soccer on the field under Danny, I think you could argue. I think under Trevor, better defensive numbers. Obviously, Trevor had done a lot before the championship, and there is no NPSL or NISA erasure that we're going to do here. The guy lifted a lot of trophies in Detroit. It's tough because I think Trevor's taking the hit for what is – you let Maxi Rodriguez walk out the door. That was your attacking soul. You know, you've got significant change, goalkeeper obviously, but other positions as well of leadership within the team that go at the same time. I think Trevor in the end is probably the fall man for a larger structural, painful run for Detroit City.
I would agree with all of that. I would backtrack for a second there. And in terms of the attacking and defensive comments, 100% agreed as it relates to present day. But I would encourage people to look a little bit further back. Detroit City fans will be more than aware of what I'm about to say. The evolution of Trevor James, NPSL, UPSL, USL Championship, from a team that was fully dominating on every area of the field, that could score in a moment's notice, but that also was one of the most difficult teams to break down. When they came into the championship, for a variety of reasons, including budget and quality of talent, they had to be defensive, Mike. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the ability to open it up the way that they did at the lower ranks in U.S. soccer, if you will. So I tip my cap to them there. I read an article, I went back and looked at it today, that came out of local Detroit news when this initial move from Trevor James from the sideline into the front office occurred, and it was called strange. And while I don't know if I would use that nomenclature for that move back then, you did sort of tilt your head a little bit as to why. Because of the fact that success had already been there, right? And Trevor came in 2019 after Ben Pierman departed, and from there it just felt like no matter what was happening in the world, they were lifting a trophy. They were successful in the first year. They've maintained that in terms of playoff appearances and what have you for the most part. I'm curious where they go from here. And the reason I say that is direction, vision, consistency under Trevor James. Movement to the sideline. That vision has changed. The consistency has changed. So now all of a sudden, you're looking around going, oh, they want to be that attacking team, right? Well, it was a great result on the weekend in Jaeger Cup for them in terms of goals. But I would say the consistency is still lacking. So the overall identity for this Detroit City team still, for me, is a lot left to be desired. And the absence of Trevor James makes me wonder how that role is going to be fulfilled long term and what that vision is going to look like. Because I'm still not convinced this is an attacking team.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say you and I sat down when Tampa Bay made their change and just listed a bunch of guys, some of whom are currently with teams, some of them are not. Trevor's name, we at least threw in that for a moment. You'd think he's going to land somewhere.
100% someone's going to go after him. It's just who goes after him and where is the biggest question. Does Trevor James want to remain on the sideline, right? Or come back to the sideline, I should say. You know, I know he has the itch for coaching, or does he want to stay in the front office? We've got Milwaukee. We've got Jacksonville. Brooklyn's involved in that. Peter Marnett in Buffalo is going to be looking for a head coach eventually. Dallas. There are plenty of teams coming in to the USL ecosystem that could certainly benefit from the quality that Trevor James, brings to an organization.
Yep, wishing Trevor all the best and whatever's next for him. All right, Dev, let's chat about what happened in, New Mexico, Las Vegas. I wrote a song for this. It's to the first Noel, but really it's just Valentine Noel. I'm not going to sing it. People deserve better than that. The first Noel, free from Vegas, we say. All right. Valentine Noel flipped to New Mexico. He reunites with Dennis Sanchez. What does he do? Immediately score in Jaeger Cup against San Antonio. In a corresponding move, because we don't trade, Mackenzie Gaines and Anthony Herbert are headed to Las Vegas. Due respect to them, the story here is Valentine Noel. Free Noel is something I've been saying to you all season. Here we go.
Well, free Noel was exactly what they were able to do last year under Dennis Sanchez in Las Vegas. I think you have to look at a couple of different things here, and I'm going to stay focused on Noel and New Mexico United. It's great that he gets a goal. New Mexico United need goals. They don't really have a 9 that's producing, right? We still haven't seen it from Among. Greg Hurst is involved in that. You've got a ton of players that are able to produce, but it's 2, 3, 4 goals. That's also part of the identity of this team. You get Valentine Noel. I see a resurgence of what we saw with him in college in terms of allowing him to play this game a little bit higher. New Mexico United certainly have the quality within the midfield. They have the ability on the back line. Now you just got to get him in advanced positions. Dennis Sanchez has allowed this team to be more explorative, if you will, going forward. Noel adds to that. I still think this team needs a 9. They need a 9 that can produce on a consistent basis. I know a lot of teams are going to be able to step into that conversation. I mean, there are 12 teams within 7 goals of each other in USL Championship. Half of the league is basically in limbo. And for my money, there's really only 6 teams out of the 24 that have an out-and-out 9. But Valentine Noel is something, man. For my money, he was the best player in America in college soccer coming out of Pitt in 2020. Lost in the College Cup in that spring, lost out to the Mac Herman Award winner Gloria Monda, the striker out of Oregon State. You can thank Terry Boss in Lexington for that one. He gives the team a different dimension. He's comfortable low. You want him mid to high. If you can get him in advanced positions running at you, forget it. I mean, game over. He is one of the best in the championship with the ball at his feet and his ability to break teams down. There's no argument whatsoever.
Born is the king of Albuquerque. All right. Las Vegas, Colby Hernandez Foster added there. They made a lot of moves this week. Birmingham in corresponding moves. Malik Howell.
In a corresponding move.
Yeah. Do either of those move the needle?
Kobe Hernandez Foster has certainly fallen out of favor under Mark Briggs. He needs games. He's more than capable. I would say that Birmingham, they need a little bit of a jump going forward. I think they started to open up a little bit more as we saw in that transitional nature under Sack. But for me, the biggest news probably is going to be what Lexington picked up and bring Stevie Cook in, Mike.
Yep, front office news, the new technical director for youth and academy programs at Lexington, Steve Cook, former head coach, assistant coach in this league. We're both big fans of him.
Yeah, going back to OKC, they had the budget there. I think the identity of some of those players started to be financially driven too much, which affected the overall success or lack thereof it, to be fair. But MLS, USL, obviously was part of the Great Phoenix organization back when, and he's just got a little bit of everything. That team is invested, and now it's time for them to move towards the youth direction. You would imagine success is going to follow at the senior level, but they have ambition. They have the idea that they are going to tackle every single level within the USL pyramid, and they've stayed consistent in that front. I applaud them for the move.
All right, coming up, we've got Danny Stone, the head coach from Orange County, later in the show. But when we come back, Jaeger Cup, we've got our group winners. We've got the wild card. It did come down to goals scored for a group and for the wild card. We'll tell you how in a minute.
Let's get back to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
It's All Access on this Tuesday night. Miss any part of the show, available on the USL YouTube page or the Sirius XM app. Mike Watts, Devon Kerr. How about we dig into the Jägermeister Cup? We finished the group stage. It's taken months, and now we just have to wait a few weeks for the knockouts to begin in the quarterfinals. The draw setting the bracket and hosting priority for the final 8 was actually last week on Golasso Network before we knew who was going to get in. Final weekend of group stage matches then followed. Here we go, Dev. All right, Group 1, it's Sacramento that goes through. They defeat Spokane 1-0. Their third clean sheet of the group stage. That's most of any team. Jared Mazzola is their cup keeper. Monterey Bay's 2-1 loss to Alta allowed Republic to pull even with Lights on 9 points solo, and then Sacramento advanced head-to-head because they beat Vegas 4-0 on May 31st. Sac is through.
Yeah, Sac deserves it. I love what I've seen out of Benitez, by the way, recognizing that, yes, he picks up a goal here. His quality of form, though, Mike, all competitions, 2 goals and an assist in his last 3 matches. Neil Collins, very direct with us earlier this year about what he could bring to the group, how he could play on the outside of a back 3, how they could bump him up into the midfield. They could use him at wing back, and that reminds me a lot of Lawrence Wyke, understanding on an opposite side of the field, but he was such a valuable piece to what he brought to the Rowdies, and I just love the cleanliness of his play. Also, the fact that he's not afraid of mixing it up. This guy throws in tackles, and he has been getting hard-nosed in and helping this team quickly pick itself up going the other direction. His goal, and certainly this team, deserve to move on.
All right, Group 2, it's San Antonio that's going through as the group winner. New Mexico finished undefeated, scored twice in stoppage time to take it to penalties in San Antonio. But Juan Agadello's brace early ultimately knocks New Mexico out in the sense that they needed to win in regulation to level the group and win head-to-head. They did not do that.
Is there a bigger kissing your sister moment here in the fact that not only do you not win, but you get blanked in pens and you still go through? Hang on. You used the phrase a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just borrowing from your glossary here.
That's way worse than kissing your sister. Going to a shootout that doesn't matter.
Look, I talked about Harvey Neville and him getting reps and gaining some confidence and stuff, but you could not convince me with Mitch Tainer and Jorge Hernandez that you're going to go over and get bounced out of this game, but certainly not from the tournament.
Yeah. Hey man,
I still maintain
what they needed.
I still maintain the fact, though, for me, though, this is some of what we saw earlier in the year from San Antonio. They've been good, man. I wasn't impressed in this game. I thought they were a little bit sloppy, to be fair, but they have been very good on the ball. Two-way, again, for a team that wasn't really there earlier on this season. I see more balance in their attack, which is probably the most important thing.
Yeah. All right, Group 3, we highlighted it at the time. Really, it felt like the group decider was May 28th. Indy beat Birmingham in penalties to take the points lead in the group. It meant the fourth match day was really about those two teams potentially handling or not handling their business. Indy 2-1 over Tulsa. Romario Williams in the 38th. There was an own goal that ultimately proved to be enough for Indy to take the group on a tournament best 11 points. Birmingham did win 2-1 over Madison. Isaac Angking actually just got loaned from Rhode Island to Madison, scored in that game, but Damas and Saucedo score. Ultimately, Indy goes through. Birmingham still alive. We'll get to the wild card a little bit later.
A big result for Indy, certainly in the Jaeger Cup, also over a very good Tulsa team that probably is the most consistent in the league in the Western Conference in terms of overall performance. I saw a really interesting interview with Sean McCauley recently, and he sat down with their front office and did this breakdown analytically of what this team is from a numbers standpoint, how they've dominated possession and lost games, that they've conceded a ton of possession and won games. But then he was quick to also turn around and say, yeah, but that means on the other side, we've also done this. Basically, there's a back and forth and ebb and flow that doesn't exist because they don't really establish themselves of what their identity is. I like to see this team where they're good on the ball in the midfield. They've got 60, 70 yards to run into. So they sit in that mid to low, they win the ball, and then they play high and they play quickly. They don't do that consistent enough. Saw that a little bit more within this game, but they're still at a point, Mike, where they're getting buried into their own half, having to defend too much, conceding sloppy goals, and then they start to chase the games. Opponents sit back on them. They're not good enough in tight-knit spaces on a regular basis to be able to break teams down. I saw that a little bit more in this game, but I want to see them attack games more and be less responsive than what we've seen over the course of the season.
All right, looking at the Jägermeister final group stage games and how they affect the ultimate quarterfinals. Group 4 rematch, Hartford and Rhode Island. El Clamico ended up going to pens. Hartford needed at least 2 points to have a chance. TJ Prestis, sick goal, 45+3. Amos Shapiro-Thompson, 49. Maxey had a penalty at 79. Adrian Diaz-Pay, equalizer in the 83rd. Where was this on CBS?
Yeah.
All we got was a guy, shaking his carrot to the entirety of the stadium at the end of the game. We got no goals. Hartford, they did win the shootout. Mark Ibarra, the only miss. Rhode Island wins the group on 10. Hartford, 9 goals scored, 9 points. We'll get to the wild card in a minute.
Okay. Two key takeaways from this game that you didn't hit. Number one, please fast forward me immediately to the game on August 23rd in league playing Hartford.
Which is immediately after the quarterfinals.
Unreal. 4 days later. 4 days. And they couldn't play each other in the quarterfinals based upon league rules. Yeah, I get all that. We should have changed it just for them. I got a little bit of an issue. My boys that we just hooked up at Raising Anchor, Matt, all of you, listen, you guys cannot talk smack against Hartford and their goalkeeper. And here's why. They beat you in penalties.
Yeah.
Wait. You're running around talking about he can't wave his finger and blah, blah, blah. He kept you to a scoreless, understanding that, yeah, you got the best of him in regulation in the sense that against him in general, you scored goals, but you also conceded 2 goals. And then they beat you in pens.
Sorry.
You got to know when to throw that wet paper towel and when it's going to stick to the wall. This wasn't one of those times.
Got to know when to fold them. I'm done singing, I swear to God.
Valentino.
All right, Group 5. This turned out to be a 3-way tie on 9 points. Loudoun won the group. They did it on Friday. Loudoun took all the sting out of it because they had all the tiebreakers. 1-1 shootout loss to North Carolina. Perez, 90+13 equalizer. It's ultimately academic. Louisville beats Lexington Saturday. 2 stoppage time goals from Jake Morris. 8,252 fans for that Commonwealth Derby, which I love. That put them on 8 goals scored. Get to that in a minute, why that matters on 9 points. Charlotte handled Richmond 3-0. 8 goals scored, 9 points. Get to that in a minute. 3-way tie. Loudoun beat Louisville May 31st. And they beat Charlotte and Pens June 28th. So Loudoun goes through. Group 6, Greenville, baby, triumphant. They are the only League One team to go through. Tampa on the path to the quarters. What did they do? Bottled it 2-1 at Charleston because you knew it was going to happen. You knew it. It went to Pens, won the shootout. That would have been enough, but they didn't get enough. Greenville then controlled their destiny. They trailed 2 minutes in at home, ultimately win 2-1 over Naples. They move to 9, take the group.
Friendly
Greenville,
reminder
baby.
friendly reminder in this game that the Tampa Bay Rowdies still scored more own goals than the Charleston Battery. Castellanos with the own goal and the dagger.
Yeah, all right. Wild card. So it's decided by points, then goal scored, then goal difference, then regulation wins. Birmingham on 10. They are through. Legion with their 2-1 win against Forward Madison. They would have won most groups. They just happened to be in there with Indy, who had 11. 4 teams on 9. Hartford won the only tiebreaker that mattered. They were second in goal difference to Louisville and Charlotte. They were second in regulation wins to Vegas and Louisville. But 9 goals scored means they played the tournament best. They also maybe got the most favorable draw, getting 2 teams beneath the playoff line in the East and 2 League One teams. But they're through.
Greenville, baby. Greenville's home draw is everything here. Greenville, you have to understand that Greenville is 4th best in League One when it comes to home play. They are worst in League One going on the road. Just 1 win.
And they host Indy, who had the most points in the group stage, but the random draw.
Look, this is the craziness that is in a random draw that USL was talking about. They want action, they want events, they want opportunity. You're going to get all of it. My biggest takeaway, because I know we're a little bit tight on time, Mike, from this draw is this. Out of the 8 remaining teams, only 2 don't have a game prior. They don't have a midweek. They don't have that 3 or 4 day, meaning these are going to be midweek, understanding it, but they don't have a weekend match. It's Rhode Island and Birmingham. Everybody else has to play on the weekend. You're going to be on short rest coming into this quarterfinal game.
Yep.
Also, the San Antonio Orange County debacle is a fun one. Do we address that now?
Yep. Wednesday, August 20th. San Antonio is supposed to play Orange County. Is the only game on that day in the championship. It's supposed to be on CBSSN. They're going to have to move that game. San Antonio will host Hartford. Loudoun will host Sacramento. Rhode Island will host Birmingham. Greenville will host Indy 11. And we're only 3 weeks away from that. All right, when we come up in a minute, Danny Stone, head coach from Orange County. Devin walks the cat, one-on-one with the OC gaffer after this.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everyone. It's USL All Access on this Tuesday evening. You can catch the USL on ESPN2 tomorrow night. Wednesday, July 30th, Orange County hosting Phoenix Rising. It's a reprisal of one of the great rivalries in the championship. You'll see it ESPN2, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Now, when you tune in, you're going to see the very finely manicured, well-dressed head coach of Orange County looking at you through the screen shortly. It is 11 months to the day since he was named the head coach at OCSC. He was an assistant to Juan Guerra, won the 2023 championship with Phoenix Rising, came over to Orange County end of August last year, named the head coach. Danny Stone joins us. Danny, this is a long time coming. Obviously, big fan of your work and excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. No, it's been a little while trying to get this in the works, so I'm glad we've finally been able to do it. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Here's the thing. You and Chad were great about this. This is a me problem. So, we're before anyone thinks that we chased all that hard, as always, Orange County is amenable as anybody. This is a me problem. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. We've made it work, so I'm glad to be here.
Look, Danny, it's interesting, I think, from the outside perspective. It was a really odd, call it 18 to 24 months for you personally, and one of the more odd carousels we've seen within the championship, right? So champion assistant coach, head coach departs to go to Houston. You take over that job. You've got the side right at the playoff line. Ultimately, they decide to part ways. So here you are going to Orange County a couple months later. They've seen their head coach depart for Europe. The interim ends up leaving, and you're thrust back into a head coaching role. You end up playing Phoenix later in the year, and you're on the opposing touchline, which I'm sure no one saw coming. I guess my point in this, Danny, is everyone talks about the transient life of a footballer and even as a manager in this sport. How did the last 24 months shape you as a coach, as a human being? I mean, it feels like a wild perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there's a lot of great points that you make there, and it's one of these things that actually, at this point in the season this year, that feels like a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, that transition now, it feels like a long time ago, which maybe is a good thing. I think I'm very happy where I am, and it was a nice, I think, transition for me during the year last year, following leaving Phoenix and then being very quickly again back involved with Orange County, and it didn't feel like too much of a disruption. The club were great with me when I first joined the organisation, which obviously in the initial stage was with the intention was to come in and assist as an assistant through the end of the season. And then things change, which like you rightly say, things change quickly in soccer, and that's something that obviously happened a little bit out of the blue. And for me, I was very pleased and grateful to be able to have the opportunity to take the lead for the team for the last 3 months or so of last season. And I think credit to everybody during that spell. Everybody was completely bought in, and I asked a lot of them, and we changed a few things, obviously mid-season, which is never an easy task to do. But everybody to a man, from players through to staff and the club as a whole, was fantastic, and we, I think, together achieved some good things towards the end of last season, and probably towards the end, in the playoffs, maybe feel that we were a little unfortunate, or maybe could have actually gone a little bit further than we did. But certainly very pleased with how things progressed. And then, as you say, taking over from the start of the season this year has been great, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that job and that process through to this point in the season, and really enjoying being part of the organisation. So certainly couldn't be happier. And I think things happen for a reason sometimes, and things change quickly, and whether it's something that you want or are looking for at the time, that's sometimes out of your control, especially in this industry. But I think things have moved in a good direction, and certainly I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, Danny Stone with us, head coach at Orange County. They finished 7 clean sheets in the last 10, only 1 defeat in that time, go into the playoffs, and ultimately come up a hair short of Colorado Springs, who went on to win the title last year. It's kind of funny because I'm trying to be hospitable. I'm over here saying football. You drop a soccer on me right off the bat. You finish your playing career in England. I don't think I've ever actually asked you this. You're at Notts, right? And then Southport. And then you come to the States to coach. You spent a good amount of time in Las Vegas, I know. What drew you to the U.S. in the first place?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this answer could be a long one if I take you really through the whole journey, but I'll try to make it as concise as I can for you. Yeah, I mean, I first came over to the US and began my full-time coaching career in Las Vegas, and was working with youth clubs there, youth academies there. And I think one thing I should say straight away is I was in Vegas for a bit more than 8 years. And in my time there, it was a fantastic learning ground for me to, sort of pivot between a professional playing career and then moving into a coaching career. It gave me everything I needed as a young coach at the time. And this is nearly 20 years ago now. It's approaching 20 years for me as a full-time coach now. But I worked, fortunately, with some very good people, some very good coaches during my time in Vegas there. Coaches who are still working in the professional game in this country with MLS organizations, USL clubs, and national team programs. And so I had a couple of very good mentors that helped me a lot in my younger years in Las Vegas as a professional coach. And like I said, for me, that place was somewhere where I really threw myself into the coaching profession and the coaching career. Really as fully as I possibly could. And I did thousands and thousands of hours of coaching on the grass with every different age group, with boys teams, girls teams, from 4 or 5 year olds all the way through to 18-year-olds, and working a little bit during that time also with college players, whilst also doing some work with the US national team, youth groups in different capacities. So, it was, like I say, in that 8 years, I covered a lot of ground, essentially, in terms of my coaching development, I think, in that time. And that gave me a good platform then to move on to the Colorado Rapids. And during my time in Colorado, I worked with their Development Academy program. I worked with their first team as an assistant, and also directed what's called their Adidas Alliance program, which was their partner clubs around the United States. And I would spend my time between all three of those roles at the Rapids, and do coach education with the partner clubs around the country. And really, again, it was a sort of a continuation where I was really going seven of the morning all the way through till 9:30 p.m. at night on many days during a week. And again, for my progression and my development as a coach, particularly stepping into a first team environment during my time in the Rapids, that was an important step for me. And again, a busy time certainly, but one that I wouldn't change at all. And it gave me, a great platform then to move on to the next steps in my journey, which have included Oklahoma City and Phoenix, and of course now Orange County.
I'm just realizing, 2016, were you a first team coach on Pablo's staff?
Yes, I worked with Pablo. Yeah, absolutely.
First MLS game I ever did, you were on the opposing sideline. I was there for NYCFC. It was like 2 weeks into the 16 season. That's wild.
I remember the game well. The game. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. I didn't realize we came that close to running into each other all that time ago.
Yeah,
Danny Stone, who apparently is the talisman of my career, with us here on USL All Access. Look, you use the word development, speaking about yourself, but look at Orange County, right? You're talking Kobe Henry. You guys sort of brought all the way along prior to your arrival. Milan Olaski goes to Europe, makes a pit stop in San Diego, lights MLS on fire, and San Diego doesn't have the money in the cap to actually pay him, so he's headed back to Europe. But his sort of come up after starting at Salt Lake really came at Orange County. It's Bryce Jamison going to the Rapids at the end of the year. We call it next wave, path to pro. There's 100 different ways of describing it. What makes Orange County's development approach, one that started before your arrival, but one that certainly you lead now as the head coach, along with the rest of that front office, what makes it unique? Why are you guys the envy, perhaps, of USL, maybe all of American soccer and youth development?
Yeah, look, I think obviously this is like you rightly say, this is something that the club have been extremely supportive of young players and very, very big on the development of those young players and inclusion of these players within professional soccer over the years. Long before I joined the organisation, I saw it from the outside, obviously, when I would coach and compete against Orange County, and was obviously aware that was a feature of the club and something that they promoted and pushed hard. And then obviously now being part of the club from the inside, I've seen that firsthand. And I think it's first of all, I would say it's a great thing to be part of. It's a great thing to promote and to be part of the development of young players, of course, for Orange County, but for the greater good of US soccer and soccer in this country. It's I'm quite proud. I think over all my years in the US coaching, that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. Is I feel very connected to that development pathway for young players, having worked like I've explained all the way through the various levels of the game to this point in my career. But Orange County certainly is a club that every day we are having conversations about the next generation of players and the players that come through our academy program and then potentially join the first team. And like you rightly referenced, there's been many examples of players who have come through that pathway and then have forged and made careers for themselves by virtue of proving themselves at this level and becoming an important member of the first team at Orange County. And then the club is a club that push and promote and want players to have the opportunity to take that next step in their career. I think this is a really, really important thing, and it's been great to be part of from the inside and to be able to see it firsthand. And that journey for young players is a difficult one. It's not the same for everybody, and not every young player that comes into an organisation is going to carry on down that pathway and take those next steps. We know that, but you rightly point out Orange County has been very successful in providing opportunities for young players to make that next step for themselves, whether that is inside the US at an MLS club like we've seen with Bryce over these last few months, or whether it's out to a European club or a club in a different country, and wherever that next step of their career path and development journey is, Orange County certainly are very supportive of that, and we want those players to be given, and we try our best to assist in the next step for those players. So it's, like I say, it's something, honestly, for me. I think I'm well placed as a coach to help that development journey. It's something that, like I've described through my coaching career at the Rapids, I was really, somewhat responsible for bridging the gap between the 19s in their academy into the first team, and I was very familiar with both sides of that in my roles there. And like I say, actually, I really enjoy the task of educating these young players as to what it really means to be a professional player, and what the steps are that they need to take in order to not just make a debut and not just join a first team squad, but honestly, the most difficult part is to sustain that and to remain a first team professional player, whether it's with us or whether it's at their next place, for the long term through their career. And of course, what we hope for every player is that they have a long and successful playing career. But it doesn't happen without the right foundation beneath them and the right guidance and tutelage along the way. And I think that's something that we take great pride in here. And I've enjoyed that through my years of coaching. And certainly it's been a nice I think challenge and an addition to my responsibilities since I've joined the club here.
Yeah. Danny Stone, head coach at Orange County, joining us. You can see Orange County in Phoenix on Wednesday night, ESPN2, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. I want to follow up on that for just 1 second, because you can look at Danny in Louisville. You can look at Ben in Charleston. You can look at, I think there have been moments for it in San Antonio, although tail end of last year, it sort of became a little more results over everything, took advantage of some loans. But, you need ownership to back you. You need the fans to understand the duality of, hey, we're minting a young player that you're going to be really proud to say is from Louisville, from Charleston, from Orange County, and he's going to be good, but there's going to be growing pains. Your job is to ultimately win games and win trophies. And so I imagine a lot of people don't understand the complexity of trying to balance that, where you had, half a dozen teenagers in your squad for a national televised game in Monterey a couple of weeks ago. I mean, That's a big ask on you as a manager. Do you ever feel any of that in your role?
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we've had consistently 5 or 6 teenagers in the squad, most weeks of the season, sort of through the last few months here. And yeah, look, it's a good point that you make, and it's certainly a balance that we try to find. I think it's very important probably to say, yes, of course, as a club and as a coach and as an Orange County team, our intention and our targets and goals are to go and win games. And part of the development of young players, I think, is really important, is that they learn what that means to be a professional player and what that means to be part of a team where your job is to be effective and to win. And we're aware of this. But at the same time, yes, we certainly go down the route of making sure that we bring these young players into these situations. And we know that, like you say, there are going to be some teething problems. There's going to be some growing pains with that, and there is an adaptation period which doesn't happen quickly. We've all been there as young professional players at one point. And when we get to that stage, we need senior players to play their part in helping the development of those younger guys. Which, it'd be wrong of me probably not to point out the great job that the senior players in this group have done this year in terms of helping and mentoring and pushing those young players. And ultimately, those young players, in order to get the opportunities, they have to earn it and they have to deserve it. Because the wrong thing to do is just to hand out opportunities that are not deserved. That really doesn't help those individuals in terms of learning what it takes. It doesn't help those individuals to really learn what it actually means to be a pro, and to be able to do this consistently day in, day out is a difficult task initially for them. And it takes a staff, it takes senior players, it takes a club being supportive of that program and wanting to be part of that pathway. It all has to come together. And ultimately we certainly do have to find a balance between wanting to be as competitive as we possibly can and win games, which is always the intention, but with the knowledge that we'll always be a club that want to bring through those young players. And at times we know that those two things can, I wouldn't say contradict each other, but they maybe don't always knit together seamlessly in terms of achieving those two things. And so we have, I think, a level of realism with that, but also it never changes the competitive mentality that we have. And I will never coach a team that doesn't have that spirit in terms of competitive mentality behind them. Whether this past weekend, I think we played with 8 or 9 teenagers in Oakland this last weekend, and like you say, the week before we had 6 in Monterey, and last weekend we had I think 2 players making their debut, academy contract players making their debut, and another academy player making his first start for the team. And we will continue to push this, but we're well aware that that comes with a level of patience that is required, and a level of understanding that as we push for success and as we push for competitiveness in terms of winning games, we have to understand sort of where those two factors occasionally will meet and sometimes not quite come together. And I think as long as everybody is on the same page with that, and as long as everybody is supportive of that, that collective set of targets that we have, then I think we're in a good place.
Excellent. Danny Stone with us, Orange County head coach. Look, wild season in the Western Conference. You guys are right in the thick of it. The whole thing is within 2-3 games from top couple spots all the way down to the bottom at the of the 12-team table. Do you guys feel any of that pressure of? You and I spoke about ahead of the Monterey game. You sort of said there are these wild swings week to week where you can be in 5th place and you can be in 11th place really fast. Do you guys ever get caught up in sort of the swings of that at all, or trying to evade that sort of leftward pendulum swing, week to week?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the honest answer to that is we're always aware of how things can fall.
We're human, right?
Yeah, of course. We're always aware of where things sit whether it's a table or an opponent in relation to where each other stand. But I think ultimately, for all that you're aware of that, it always finds its way back around to the fact that the next game is coming, and regardless of the greater picture, the next game will remain to be the most important one that you're about to play. And so, I think it's probably easy to overanalyze some of those things and try to predict too much and try to guess at where things could land. And I think normally when you take half a step back from it, you end up in that same place where whether you decide, hey, this is a real key game, or whether it's a game that is a game maybe that you don't place as much momentum swing around. You end up, as a coach anyway, for me, you end up at the same place. There's no game that I end up preparing for that I end up feeling is more or less important, or regardless of where things could end up after the game, you end up in the same place in terms of how you approach it. Or certainly speaking for myself, that's where I get to. And it's I think that's actually probably an important skill to have, is to be able to step back and look at the wider perspective, but then always be able to come back around for yourself and for the team to be able to say, look, regardless of what next week or last week looked like, this is now where we are, and we play the game that is ahead of us, and we always want to do as well as we can with that one.
Orange County head coach Danny Stone, you'll see his side take on Phoenix on Wednesday night, ESPN2, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. For one, I'm just going to say this. It doesn't really require an answer from you per se. It warmed my heart to see the Phoenix fans share their support for you when things went opposite directions at the end of your tenure there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you won a championship there. I'm sure there's warm feelings from those moments, and jumping into a head coaching position at the pro level was obviously a jump that I'm sure you were excited to make in your career, but that was then, and this is now. What's the elevator pitch for people to watch on Wednesday night?
Yeah, look, I think on Wednesday night you're going to see, two teams I think that are in a fairly good run of form at the moment, and it will be a very competitive game. And I think I hope it's a great spotlight and highlight for USL as a league and a game that sort of lives up to those expectations. Because I feel we're in a league right now that is continuing to grow, continuing to develop and evolve as a league. And I think every year, and it's been I think 7 seasons for me now in USL Championship, and every year it gets better, and every year teams improve from a structural point of view, from a resources point of view, and from a quality of player perspective and coaching as well. And I think the league is an exciting league that continues to improve year on year. So I hope this game on Wednesday is a game that showcases the league. But of course, again, like I've referenced, I think when it comes down to the game, we will approach the game like every other game that we want to go and win, and I'm sure Phoenix will do the same. But look, to touch on your first point there, I think for me, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Phoenix, and worked with a lot of great people there over my time, players, staff, and really enjoyed it. And I think I had a very good relationship with the fans throughout my time there. And so it was, I really appreciate the support that they showed in that situation. And of course, at the time for me, it wasn't something that of course I was looking for, or something that I was hoping would go that way. And it came as a surprise, and it was a very kind of abrupt situation that occurred. But that can happen. It's that is what it is. And like I say, I think sometimes things work out for the better. And I feel I'm in a good place for me now, and I think it probably fits well for me in terms of my work in the organisation. But I was, extremely grateful to those Phoenix fans for showing the support that they did for me at the time, and I think for several weeks, past the moment where things went in different directions. And I'll forever be grateful for that, and I'll always look forward to seeing them again, whether that's in Phoenix or here in Orange County. But it will be I think a nice occasion and a good day for a great game, I hope.
No doubt. Danny, I'll close with this. Chad Remidi is sending Gnarly's hot sauce over for me to taste. Should I be scared of this? Every time I see this dude, he's either terrorizing adults or the envy of every child in the stadium.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm getting into.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not going to be much help on that. I think I probably missed most of it. I tend to be in the locker room when I think most of this is taking place. So, your guess is as good as mine on this one. But if Chad is sending it your way, I'd maybe just approach it with a little bit of caution. But
yeah.
That's the best advice I can probably offer right now.
My man. Danny, appreciate it. Good luck on Wednesday night, and can't wait to chat again.
Sounds great. All right, Mike. Thank you for having me. Good to speak to you.
That's Danny Stone, Orange County head coach. On the other side of the break, there are 3 national TV games on ESPN2 and CBS Sports Network this week. Devin and I'll break them all down next on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access on this Tuesday evening. The USL on Sirius XM FC continues Saturday. Louisville City hosting North Carolina FC. That's become a fun matchup. You'll hear it 8 p.m. Eastern time right here on the channel. All right, Dev, there are not just national radio games, national TV games this week as well, including one that's ongoing right now. Pittsburgh and Miami on ESPN2. We're in 2 places at once. What are we seeing?
Assuming that the personnel haven't changed in the conversation with the coaches and the identities ring true, you're seeing a ball-dominant Miami FC team. You're seeing a Bob Lilly's team that defensively is one of the most stout in the league over the last 9 games. Only 5 goals against, 5 shutouts. And Bonfiglio running at that back line. They're going to have to probably do it in smaller spaces, which they really struggle with. My hope is that the grit from Miami in their ability to hold the ball rings true, and you see that front line in midfield start to combine a little bit more for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, who have struggled to do so. Open in transition has been fine, but they are not going to get a top 4 spot unless those groups start moving together.
Tomorrow, doubleheader, CBS Sports Network, 8 p.m. Hartford, New Mexico, and then 10 p.m. ESPN2, Orange County, Phoenix. Pick one game that you'd want to watch.
Yeah, I'll take the Orange County Phoenix.
Interesting. I'd actually go the other way.
No, the only reason I say that is I feel like what Danny Stone in that group has brought to us, like I feel like they're right on the line of pushing that narrative in the West a little bit. And especially in the midfield, things have gotten better. I'm still looking for Phoenix to turn a corner here. I've sung their praises for a while. They were a Jaeger Cup team that if they could get out of their own way defensively, you might be having a conversation to them about not being in the final 8, Mike, but being a group winner. They need to take that next step under Pa Moduka.
And it's the second game for Noel with New Mexico. All right, Dev, learn anything from this show?
I learned it was possible to go the entire show without saying thank you to Trevor James and this magical kit that he was kind enough to bestow upon us before his departure.
You know what? I'm so glad we blew up their budget right before he bolted. And I learned singing, not for me. For Devin, Emmett, Mike, we'll talk to you again next Tuesday night, everyone. So long.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.